In this video we will be looking at how to display categories on the front end. My name is Morten and this video is part of the Ucommerce for Umbraco masterclass. Here we have Avenue Clothing, and up here to the left we have the categories coming directly from the Ucommerce backend. These are the same categories as we want to render on our little store that we created in the previous exercise. We have the navigation right here, but it's quite empty, so let's see if we can fix that. Before we write any code, let's take a look at how it looks like in the backend. Here I am down on the Ucommerce section, and up here we can see the catalog structure in Ucommerce. It consists of a few levels that I want to go through very briefly. We're going to do that more in depth later on in the training as well. The first level here is the store level, which is basically a channel in more popular terms. We can tie stores or channels to host names in Umbraco, which gives us the ability to have what we call multi-channel functionality. It means that if you have different brands, if you have different users that needs to log in on different domains or similar features, we can split that up on individual stores in Ucommerce as well. We do that by tying the host name together with a domain that has been created inside Umbraco. Right now it's empty, but if I go and add a domain, I can select that in the host name right here. Since we only have one store, Ucommerce is clever enough to figure out which one to use. But should you find yourself in the situation where you need multiple stores, you can differentiate between them using the host name here. On the next level we have catalogs. Catalogs in Ucommerce is basically a way to differentiate pricing and also what categories the customer will see. Out of the box, Ucommerce will be able to resolve a single catalog, but should you have the need for having multiple catalogs, it could be B2B users see different catalogs and different price settings than other users, then having multiple catalogs might be a good idea. And again, since we only have the one, Ucommerce will also be clever enough to figure out which one to use. The next level that we have here is the different categories. It's an infinite deep structure of categories that you can create to put your products in different buckets. So each of the categories that I have here will consist of multiple products where I can add products from other categories. I can also right click on my category and click create and either create a category or a product inside the dialog that opens up in here. Products can live across multiple categories and across multiple stores. We'll take a look at that later when we're building the product page. But for now, let's try to see if we can get the categories that we have here out on the front end. Notice that since it's a tree structure, we need to take that into account when we write our code. But let's get to it. I will go back to my Ucommerce masterclass solution here, and then I will find the partial view controller. In here we have an action result that renders category navigation. So this is where we want to write our code. Again, we have used Umbraco to wire up the page, and in MVC we can write out this partial view here using the techniques that MVC and Umbraco offers us when we build our websites. So in here we're actually going to write the first couple of Ucommerce relevant lines of code. And let's try to take a look at what namespaces we need. Please remember that you can use your handouts as well for this exercise. In the handouts you will find all the relevant APIs that you need to use in order to finish this exercise. The first using statement that I need is Ucommerce ucommerce.entitiesv2. Inside ucommerce.entitiesv2 you will find all the relevant entities that are used to do anything Ucommerce related. All entities that we find under here are entities that eventually will be saved in the database at some point. It's products, categories, stores, prices, discounts, everything Ucommerce contains. To extract the categories on the front end, we're going to use what we call the top-level APIs. The top-level APIs is a static, convenient set of methods that you can use in order to build your browse functionality and also to do checkouts. So throughout the entire training session here, we will be using ucommerce.api both to show stuff on the screen, but also to add products to baskets, and the entire checkout flow as well. So now that we have the two namespaces, let's see what we can do. The action result here returns a view with a category navigation view model. This category navigation view model will contain the categories that are coming from Ucommerce. So the exercise here is really grabbing the categories from Ucommerce, mapping them over to our view entities, and then render the view. On our category navigation here we have a collection of categories that we want to use. And down here on line 19 I have my helper method called map categories, which is the one that I will call. Map categories takes in a collection of categories, and the categories that it takes in is the category type found under ucommerce.entitiesv2. And that's the one that we need to find. To grab the categories, we can use the Ucommerce API. All the APIs are split into relevant areas like catalog library for everything related to the catalog system, marketing library related for anything to the marketing activities, search library for doing search, and transaction library for the checkout flow that we will be building later. On catalog library I have a bunch of methods that we're going to use throughout the browse functionality, which is the first part of the training course. And the first method that we need to call is get root categories. Optionally it takes in a catalog ID, which means that I can grab root categories from other catalogs besides the catalog that I'm in right now. Ucommerce will automatically figure out what catalog we're in based on what we call the catalog context. We will be looking at that a little later. So in the context here, by calling get root categories without specifying any ID, we will get all the categories that has no parent. Let's take a look at how that looks like in the backend. That will be tops, shoes, and accessories. And after we have rendered those, we of course want to render the children as well, so we get the entire tree structure. So here we pass in the root categories. And now it's time to write some mapping code. So I have my categories here, and what I want to return is a list of our category view model. So basically we just want to take data coming from the database and map them over to our view models. So here I have category to map. Which is our category. Let's also write the full namespace here, like that. And in my for each loop here, I will create a new category model. On my model here, I can set the name that I want to display. And here I have a little trick. I can call an extension method called display name, which is a method that you get if you import the namespace called ucommerce.extensions. The display name will automatically figure out what language the site is running and then take the translated version of the category name. So the formal name that I have here, for example, is basically just the internal name of our category. If we go to English UK or English United States, we can set the display name and description in each of those languages. So the .display name method will actually figure out which of the two languages that we're running and then grab that. It will do that by asking Umbraco for this. Umbraco will always be the system responsible for telling Ucommerce what languages we are running. This means that you don't have to maintain two sets of languages. Ucommerce will just automatically behave based on what Umbraco tells us. So if Umbraco says that we're running ENUS, then this is the display name that we will be using. Otherwise, we'll find the other one. If we have set no display name, it will just default to the internal name of the category. Next, I want to also set the URL of the category. The URL can be extracted using the APIs as well. In here we have something called get nice URL for category that we can pass in. And get nice URL for category will basically give us a SEO friendly URL that we can use. Underneath the hood, it will use URL redirects to resolve the right page inside Umbraco. Remember that Umbraco will always be the system that are responsible for figuring out what page we're running and thus what templates that we need to render. So Ucommerce will not be the driver of how the category page looks like. That will be mainly Umbraco, but we can use the APIs inside those templates to grab the right information. So instead of setting the nice URL right here, right now, what I want to do instead is I want to set the URL to the actual page that will be resolved, which will be /home/category. And since we haven't created that page yet, we will of course get a 404 until we create it inside Umbraco. And then to be able to resolve the right category, we need to pass in the ID of the category in our context. This is why it's not very SEO friendly, because we don't want a URL that looks like this. We want something that looks pretty. And the pretty URL will basically internally resolve the URL that I'm typing out here. It's based on URL redirect rules that you can set in your .NET application. I will pass in the category ID, which is the primary key of the category in the database. This is what the catalog context that I was mentioning before will use in order to figure out what category we are displaying. Again, we will take a look at that a little later. So now we have the name and we have the URL. We also want to map the child categories so that we render out the entire tree structure. To do that, we will recursively call map categories by specifying not the category.categories property here, which is the eventually be the child categories, but we always want to use the APIs if we have a relevant API to use. So here we can call get categories for a category. So the rule of thumb is always to use the top level APIs if one exists for set purpose. So now we have mapped that as well. Now we just need to add our category in the collection that we're returning, otherwise we won't see anything on the screen. like that. So now we have added that to our collection. Now we can safely return them in the end. What we need to do now is build our solution. When that happens, the deploy script will push over the new assemblies. And I know here in my layout that we will call a render function to render this partial view here. So when we refresh our page here, hopefully we should see the set of categories that we want to see. And here we have tops, formal, casual, shoes, accessory, ties and scarves, which was the categories coming from the backend. When I click on my link here, we will of course see a 404 because we haven't created the page inside Umbraco. We will do that in the next exercise. Now it is your turn to write the same code. Please use the handouts that we have provided for this exercise. Pause the video and come back after you have done this. You should spend around 10 to 15 minutes on this exercise. Welcome back. Let's do a little recap of what we have learned in this video. We used Umbraco and the partial view controller to render out the category navigation. We learned that we can use the store level to differentiate what stores are being used for what domains inside Umbraco by specifying the domain name. We also learned that the catalog level underneath the store level is used to contain categories and to display pricing. Next, we used the Ucommerce APIs to grab the root categories of the catalog in the context of our website. The same root categories we used to find the child categories and render those as well. We learned that the category structure is an infinite deep tree structure that we can use in order to categorize the products on our store. We also learned that the APIs relevant for the website is used under the namespace called ucommerce.api. Those are the top level APIs that we use in order to do all the different things that we expect to do on the front end. So everything that we need to use is embedded within the ucommerce.api namespace. In the next video, we will take a look at how we can show the category on the category page that we will be creating inside Umbraco. See you in the next video.